but I'm only human and I can make mistakes, and I'm happy to accept where mistakes are made. So apologies if you feel you haven't seen or heard enough from me. Yeah, but I don't want this to be about me. I want this session, the reason I'm here is to hear from other people, to hear what people have experienced during the pandemic, what their perspectives are, and to take any questions away that people might want answers for. So yeah, I don't know if that's answered your question sufficiently, Joe, but yeah, I can apologize if you don't feel I've done enough.
No, those are kind words. Thank you. We do appreciate. You know, we've worked in the past together. Mr. Peter Mason, would you like a chance?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Look, it's good to be here. I think similarly to Just Kieran, look, we have been under lockdown conditions. What I'd say is the life of a councillor isn't one that's necessarily always lived in public. We do a significant amount of work, whether that's sort of the casework that we deal with as sort of individual members, and certainly that definitely hasn't stopped during lockdown. And actually sort of the caseload that I think both Just Kieran and I and some of our other councillor colleagues has only gone up. There's actually quite a high rate of unemployment and issues to do with people's sort of housing situation that sort of have continued all the way through COVID. I think I sort of tried to make sure that I can be on as many of the public meetings that have been called. I know that I've not always been able to answer questions, certainly not before I left the cabinet, but I think it's important that I'm here, and I'm here to listen to what the community has to say. Look, my understanding of this meeting was that you sort of called it because we weren't having ward forum meetings and you very much wanted to be sort of in control of the agenda, and I think that's entirely right. And I think as we probably get through lots of issues, I'm very happy to contribute, very happy to share my view if you want it, and I'm sure we can take away from this meeting sort of any actions that you might want to see us do. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions on various topics that I'm sure are quite important and to people, and who as they have been very passionate about in the past, and I'm sure you will be going forward.
No, thank you. That's very, very good. Sufyan, anybody got their hands up, young man?
Yes, a lady called Shelley has her hand up.
Carry on, carry on. Come on, Shelley.
I've unmuted her.
Hello, good evening, everybody. My name is Shelley Chahal. I don't know if everybody knows me here. I believe some people will. Jags, Baji Salvinder, he knows me very well. A few other colleagues. I run a not-for-profit organisation in Southall, supporting people from disadvantaged backgrounds in a range of ways according to skill and capacity. I have been lately speaking on Desi Radio on the Saturday morning debate shows. I don't know if colleagues listen to that, but the issues that were highlighted on the agenda for today's meeting, some of those are the issues that have been discussed during those sessions. And I'm grateful to Mr. Bangu. I don't know if Mr. Bangu is the same gentleman that used to, a few years back, if you used to speak on Desi Radio as well, I'm not sure. If I may just mention, because I'd like to engage on each topic as you go through the agenda rather than speaking all at once at this moment. But if I can just sort of make some suggestion, an immediate suggestion, please, because, the councillors, like for instance, where it has my name, I have detailed who I am. It would really be helpful if the councillors could say in their description that they are councillors, because I wasn't aware that this is Councillor Peter Mason. And I know Just Kieran Chauhan from name, but again, it's not explained that she's a councillor. And I think for transparency and accountability, that's really necessary so that everybody knows who are the councillors. Secondly, if I just may, forgive me, Mr. Bangu, I use the word correct. I don't mean that derogatorily. I'll explain. Actually, the councillors are no longer dependent in Southall on the 40% of the population that go out to vote. The reason, because 40% go out to vote, according to the law of averages and probabilities, discounting those people that will vote for Liberal Democrats who will never get in this area. Number 2 is Conservative. So Liberal Democrats split the vote, and so Labour always get in. Going back to 1965, I've done the research. It was then only in Dormers Wells ward that there were Conservative councillors. All through since then, it's been Labour, Labour, Labour. So if I may just correct, it's actually the Labour Party members that determine who will be our councillors. We are required, according to the politics of the subcontinent, which they have imported here into Southall, because most of these councillors, 14 out of 15 Asian, most of them are born and brought up in the subcontinent. And that's where their values come from. Councillors like Just Kiran Chauhan, 2 others I believe are only the young ones from 23 years back being councillors. The rest 7, 11, 21, 23, 27 and 39 years. Labour councillors in this town, all in post due to the nominations that come from the Labour Party members. We don't know who they are. They are behind cloaks. And once the councillors kowtow to those members, where we are required to kowtow to the councillors, once they have been selected, that's it, they're in post, and we can just sit, I mean, they rely that only 40% are going to go out to vote, and they're going to get in, and that's the way the system works. So I just wanted to explain that point. I really think, I have to say, and I'll come to that point later, but what we have witnessed as a consequence of COVID-19, where BAME representation has not met the needs of their communities according to the Local Government Act 2000, and where we have seen people from our community die because of inadequate accommodation, where these BAME councillors have not implemented local policies to meet local people's needs, I really believe that it's now high time that let the Labour members who put these people in post, who have been failing us for 40 years, they should now sit at home and let community members from the community, from the ground, non-party, i.e. people who are not affiliated with any party, they should come forward to be the councillors, and the Labour councillors for Southall should sit these next elections out. Thank you.
Shelley, that's actually excellent. Listening to you, I've learned a lot. Thank you. And there will be some good news at the end of this session. But thank you very much. It's excellent. I've learned a lot from you just now. Just to listen is powerful, just to listen. Thank you. Sufyan, anybody else?
No one's got their hand raised virtually, but yet Salvinda, I think his hand's raised, his virtual background is cutting his hand. So yeah.
Hello, Mr. Dillon.
Sent you an invite.
Hello, hi. Okay,
How are you,
firstly, I'm going to respect for Cash because they've been fighting a campaign, which I was involved with. I just want to share the experience. The first question Joe asked was, where's democracy? I have no illusions that this system has no democracy. because we did win the campaign to stop the gasworks development way back in 2012. It was Boris Johnson who overturned a unanimously decided democratic decision. So the answer to that question is there is no democracy. Two, how are decisions made? If we're going to fight any battle, we should know, we should be, how to, just to further understanding, I made a few videos on this, which I'd like to share with you, that how are decisions made in the Westminster model? First of all, it's the cabinet that makes decisions in the council or even the government level. And even if there are some good intentioned councillors, I'm not saying all councillors are bad, by and large, we can't trust them, but there will be some who will be willing to fight for the community, but they come under tremendous pressure to toe the party line or do what the cabinet wants. So how are we going to get out of this difficult situation? Shelley has given a part answer to that. We need to form a constituency committee. I've been trying to do this for years. A committee and an independent committee that will empower, that will support independent candidates and those candidates, irrespective of which party they belong to, are going to stand up for the community. So first, what is the agenda? Stop the developments and invest in Ealing Hospital. There are other agendas as well. Let's just take this one. Stop the developments before there's any further damage to our community. How are we going to go about that? We need to form a constituency committee which will empower independent candidates and those, look at the track record of people who want to come forward next time. Choose from those who are fighting in the battle from the ground, those who are active, got a track record of fighting for community, and our community mobilizes meetings to back them up in the next elections. And we use our local media. That's why I created local media, and it's only a small effort, but I share that with you and fully support Cash with that small effort as well. So then everybody must be accountable. If I don't know if Jessica remembers, when I came from Australia, I've stood as a local councillor, I've stood in the GLA, I've stood as a parliament candidate, and I can share the trickery that's used to keep us down. A lot of you are putting very sincere, hard efforts in this, but what's letting us down is our own councillors, most of them, because their ambition isn't to fight for the community. Their ambition is to rise up the ladder and become MPs. Don't forget, we were colonized. How we were colonized? Through elite accommodation. What is elite accommodation? Those who will collaborate with the colonialist, or in this case, the status quo, to sell out the communities, they get more and more promotion. Can we rely on the MP? No. When I first raised my arm against the gasworks development way back in 2008 or something, there's only one person in the whole meeting upstairs. When I put my hand up, I said, no to this development, they're going to harm our community. It was Vrinder Sharma who was cynical to me, and all the councillors were in that meeting in the Indian Work Association meeting upstairs, saying, who is this guy? He's a troublemaker. And Vrinder Sharma's comment was, how can this troublemaker make noise when there's going to be £1 billion invested to uplift Southall gasworks? We started the campaign, a small number, we built it up. We had a huge following in the end, so much so that on the day of the decision, there was a mass protest outside Southall Town Hall. The balcony was full, and our councillors were so embarrassed, so humiliated, they had to put their hands up in support of our campaign, and that's how we got the unanimous decision. Despite that, Boris Johnson overturned it. Vrinder Sharma, Deer, all played tricks to denigrate us. In the end, we said, look, we need money. We need to fight in the courts against Boris Johnson. We didn't have the money. We were like you know, and because of lack of support, that campaign dwindled. I'm proud you've taken up this campaign. You are fighting a harder battle than we did because there were no developments. Then we came up with a community plan. We want a medical hospital. We want aesthetic area there. We want a library. We want a community center. It would uplift it south. So that was a plan with which we mobilized the whole community and won the vast majority on our side. That was all overturned. But the point I'm coming to, Shelley, what's mentioned, forget who belongs to what party. We unite around a cause. Whoever's willing to fight in the Conservative Party, who's ever willing to fight in the Labour Party, but I would rather be whoever's willing to fight independence. I'm sure there's some good talents in Cash. There are good talents now coming up in the Gurdwara, and I'm trying to link up with all the campaign groups, go from the grassroots, bring forth fighting candidates with a track record who fight for the community sincerely, who will be accountable for them. And if they don't do it, we'll replace them by somebody else. I'll finish off here. When I came from Australia, there's a reason why I stood in elections. And I relied on a few people, and let's say I was naive or I was new when I came back. But in my letter, there was about, whole Dominion Centre was full. The first thing I did was show them a letter that I'll fight for against privatization, against health, education, all that. And if I don't fight for the community, here's my resignation letter. It should be promises to fight for the community, the agenda for the community, accountability, and even have the big enough heart to say, if I don't do it, give those chances to those who will.
Well done, well done. That's very good. Sophia, anybody else have their hand up?
No one virtually. Or
Angela, do you have a question you like to ask?
Yeah. Oh God, clap pads. Never mind. You know, I feel that the councillors, quite frankly, are not interested in what is going on. We have met some of them. They have experienced the odour for themselves. They've been in residents' homes and they've seen the site from residents' rear windows. And that hasn't been enough to galvanise them to take action and, if necessary, to have the whip withdrawn and to stand as an independent, because it seems to me they are not driven by public service. I went on walkabout with a member of CASH, and what was enough to drive me was meeting a resident, and she said her mum came to stay in Southall. She was elderly, but she was in good health. And within a short period of time, she contracted pneumonia. She was admitted to Ealing Hospital 3 times, and on the 3rd time, she died. This woman also lost her husband. Her husband was middle-aged, but reasonably healthy, worked at the airport all his life. When he retired, started suffering heart problems and died. And it was enough for me to look into her eyes. You've probably heard that saying, the eyes are the window to the soul. And that was enough for me to think, this is either going to break me or make me stronger, because her grief was palpable. It was real. And I felt it. Now, I'm a firm believer that power doesn't lie with the councillors. Power lies with the people. Think back to the poll tax riots. Who influenced the Conservative government to backtrack on the poll tax policy? It was the people. Now, in life, you can have barriers. And I think to myself, there is a way around a barrier. CASH started with just 2 residents, myself and another resident, talking about what was happening and the impact it was having on residents. Now, to me, it's quite galling that the councillors know how bad it is and knew how bad it was. Back in 2018, Peter Mason said what residents had to deal with was supremely bad. But in 2019, he was accepting sponsorship from Barclay Group. Not a man who has principles, not an honourable person. Now, I've lived in this community since 2006. My children were born here, they go to school here. I value this place. Now, as far as I'm concerned, you know, this meeting can be a force for good. We can look at mobilising and connecting as a community. You know, as I said in the email with the link, that people can set up small groups. Maybe we can get a community newsletter going, a community cookbook with recipes, maybe connecting people who are isolated. We don't need the councillors to do that for us. I actually undertook some training quite recently in community work delivered by Eden Community Projects. And what struck me was somebody who said, I'm just a powerfully ordinary person. And people like that are making a huge difference in their community. The person who turned around their local park that was full of vandals and an awful place to go to a place where the community put in the work to make it a place that people desire and want to go to. The same thing can happen in Southall. We've all got the capacity to mobilise and come together. It doesn't take the councillors for us to do that. Yes, there are threats. Yes, I'm frustrated that lots of high rises are going up, all because Southall's going to be on Crossrail. But we can do much to actually improve this community. But I also feel quite strongly that Labour are complacent. They couldn't give two hoots about life in Southall as long as there are high rises going up and there's more council tax coming in and people from the Far East buying these properties which are out of the reach of ordinary people. Now, a couple of you have mentioned standing as independents. And I think there needs to be a breath of fresh air, people who stand up, who have values, who are not putting the National Party interest before the interests of their community. I know potentially there are a couple of people here tonight who are seriously thinking about standing next year in the local elections. We don't have to be defeatist. Cash has started to make a difference. National Grid, who remediated the site of the blue gas holder, they would have done that without actually covering the site and implementing an air filtering system. But because we basically caused a lot of negative publicity, they realised we were a force to be reckoned with. So they built an enclosure over the site. We have to be alert to the risks. I see Jags and Giras in the room. Jags works for Berkeley Group. Berkeley Group are all about dividing the community. And I think community groups have to ask themselves, should I be taking funding from this organisation when they are killing people? Make no mistake, people are dying because of the air pollution. They may not drop dead instantly, but it is killing people. But I would like to see us come together, think about initiatives that we can implement to make life better. Thank you.
Well done, Angela. Any hands up, Sufyan?
I saw Councillor Chauhan's hand raised. I don't know if her point was covered, but I'll unmute her.
Is it covered, Councillor Jaskiran? Can she hear me?
I just wanted to sort of come back on some of the points that have been made about perceptions of self-interest and things like that. And I think, you know, when I first stood for the elections in, I think it was now almost 3 years ago, I was a resident just like everybody else here and had been very disconnected from local politics. I stood for the reason that I wanted to be a source of, you know, support for the community, to hear people out, to hear and, you know, take those issues to the council and make sure that there was a flow and a channel of communication that was always open for people. And I really hope that's one thing at the least that I hope I've done, that, you know, anybody who emails me, anybody who calls me, people who want to arrange meetings with me, I'm always open, even in the midst of, you know, huge personal crises has happened during the pandemic. I've made a lot of time and I put a lot of energy towards that. And even with cash, I mean, I think as Angela was alluding to, that, you know, I was one of the people that have visited the site when it was possible to, you know, when we didn't have national restrictions and lockdowns, etc., who visited the site and who has really tried to hear out residents and support them as much as possible in my capacity as a backbench councillor, which I think, you know, as many have alluded to, there are lots of restraints that exist within, you know, the council not only the being in a national party and having a whip, but also in your position and within the council itself. So yeah, that in terms of, I don't want to make this about me, and I don't want to make it about defending my record. And this is only the last thing I want to say, because I think what Angela proposed as a space of community empowerment and linking people up, I think this is, I would hope that that would be the strongest outcome from this meeting, and I would fully support that. But yeah, I have pretty much constantly tried to support CASH in getting their points heard and getting their voices heard, in bringing councillors outside of Southall also to come and visit the site, to increase awareness about what's happening in with the gasworks site. Even recently, I've constantly, and this is part of the frustration I feel as a councillor, is a lot of the work that we do isn't seen by a lot of the public. It's a case of meetings that we attend, talking with officers, speaking with other senior councillors, bringing this up, and that is it. I can put on record very strongly that this is an issue I never forget. I always bring it up in every scenario possible. Most recently, the last one that springs to mind was the Equalities Commission amongst councillors, with the Chief Commissioner, talking about the importance of the gasworks site in terms of structural racism and environmental racism, as Angela has pointed out on various occasions. I think it's a very strong term. And in terms of, the high rises that have been going up consistently, I have been on public record as well. You can look up old meetings of the planning commission, the planning committee. I have, in my capacity as ward councillor, presented objections after objection to high-rise towers going up in Southall, in Southall Broadway ward, and very much at every opportunity, I would say in every planning objection that I have brought up the issue of air quality, and pointed out the importance of having air quality monitoring as a firm part of every single planning application that goes through in Southall, because of the hard work that CASH has done. And that we don't want to take any credit for that, because a lot of activists and a lot of community members have put in a lot of hard graft to work on this issue and to bring attention to this issue. And it has been nothing short of astounding and inspiring to see what community members have done. So that's been my contribution, and my door is always open, virtual door, to advice, criticism, things you think I could be doing better. I'm like, I hope I would serve you in the most humble way possible as your representative, because I assure you, I have no self-interest here. I have no aspirations to climb up the political ladder. My only aspiration is to be a Southall resident, to serve my constituents as best as possible, to serve my fellow residents. So I don't even think of it in hierarchical terms. But yeah, this is, if there are shortcomings, I'm human, I make mistakes, but I'm always willing to fess up to when I make mistakes. It's a principle that I live by. And I agree with Angela. I think power is with the people. We are, as individuals and political representatives, people. And I've seen CASH achieve so much together as a community. And my role and my only purpose here is to continue ensuring that your voices and your concerns are heard within the council, within Labour group, at any possible, at any possible point, and also to ensure that things get done for you, and to keep, oversight and vigilance over policy, and make sure that people's needs are being fulfilled. And when they're not, and as I say, it's not always the case. Politics is politics, and my voice is not always heard, but I can assure you all that I do continue. I am undeterred in that, even if I'm not heard, and I will continue to do so. But I don't want to say anything more about what I have or have not done. I really want this to be a space where you all share your experiences and connect over that.
Councillor, thank you very much. Sufyan, any hands up?
Yep, so we've got Leslie Bunda, and then Shelley has messaged me privately as well. So
Fire away, Leslie, please.
Leslie,
and good evening to you.
Good evening. I'm unmuted now.
Yep,
Can you see me or not?
No.
Would you like to see me? I can get the camera. That's right. That's right. Ah, there you go. Brilliant. Hi, everyone. And just want to say it's been an honor over the last 3 months to work with many passionate people at Cash. Joe, Angela, Sufyan, and hearing this now, you know, your passion, Selvinda, was enormous. And Shelley, utterly big respect. The reason why I'm here effectively is because I am just concerned about the way in which the people of Southall, and indeed the people across Ealing, have been exploited by politicians who have not represented them. They have failed to bring the issues to a head. They have failed to take it up at a higher level to their cabinets. And I respect you, Just Kieran, okay? And I'm deeply respectful of the fact that you, as you said, you will fess up when you fess up. And I'm really pleased to hear that you said these words, which is you find it difficult to then bring up other matters because they're above you in your role and you're not on the cabinet. And that's one of the biggest problems, that we have a cabinet run by a political party. We have people who are on the council who belong to political parties, and they have this fear of losing their whip. Now, in all honesty, if you are a councillor of whichever party it is, and it's the same applies to our lovely friends at the Conservatives and our lovely friends at the Liberal Democrats, okay? If you feel passionately about your community and nothing's happening because your party machine isn't allowing it to happen, then by all means, lose that whip to show that you mean who you are. Because ultimately, the legacy that we have in Southall and across the rest of Ealing is a legacy of failure. And I'm not going to mention names. I mean, by all means, look at my Twitter account, look at some of the councillors who have been around for Southall, who have done nothing. They've sat back, they've kind of not written letters that they promised they'd be writing, and it's taken Angela and her team and a little help from myself to push the agenda, which is to get people of Southall recognised. It's not good enough anymore now to say we're doing something. I mean, a recent example would be there's a Dr. Sahota, who said in January he'll be writing a letter to Boris Johnson. That was in January. He wrote the letter and it was published in March, 3 months later. Quite frankly, those are not good things anymore. You have other issues where we have a local councillor, Peter Mason, who says that when he was on the cabinet, there's certain things he couldn't do or whatever it was. And then he by leaving the cabinet, he could do a lot more. But quite frankly, Peter, you've done less now. And people cannot trust these people anymore now. You have titles as councillors. For example, I don't know if people are aware, but Ealing Council was committed to what's called the living wage for all workers. Yet people who work for Ealing schools and the catering workers do not get a living wage. Well, guess what? The cabinet member for that, the champion, was Peter Mason. It's quite shocking that councillors are happy to have titles that imply they're doing great things, but then when people are exploited in the community, they're doing nothing. And that's what we have, sadly. We have a lot of exploitation going on by councillors who want to fulfill their political careers. And as Selvinda said, and others have said, Shelley, Angela, enough's enough now. We need people who are part of the community, who are not doing it for the money, and the money can be quite good. Yes, £10,000 a year. Yes, you are working a full-time job yourself, but you may be doing this part-time, but it's still not bad. Maybe if you're on the cabinet, you're getting £20,000, fantastic. But the fact of the matter is, you're getting paid for this. Now, as I've said before, and this is really quite clear, and I want to allude to this very carefully, if you are a councillor, you are there for the people. If you are not doing it well, then you should have a performance review. If this was any other organisation, you'd be put onto a PIP, a performance improvement plan. And quite frankly, all the councillors in Ealing need to be put onto a PIP because they're not fulfilling their obligations as councillors. That's all I have to say, really. And I fully support what is going on with Cash. And it's been a real pleasure to hear the passion from Joe, hear the passion from everyone, okay? And the fact of the matter is, when young people like Sufyan have to say the council isn't listening to them, their health is suffering, and the people there are people like Peter, you know, you should hold your head in shame, Peter, that people are dying. Maybe not today, but they're dying, okay? Their souls are dying. Their lives are being destroyed because you have done nothing for them. And that applies to all people, you know, and, you know, if you are a councillor and if you feel passionately about the people of Southall, the people of Perryvale, the people of Ealing, Greenford, and all the bits that make up our fantastic community, then you will go independent. You cannot be a councillor and you cannot keep towing the party line because the party line is destroying Ealing and destroying lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Sophia, who's next?
It would be Shelley and then Teresa Mummans.
No problem. No problem. Let's hear from you, Shelley.
Thank you again. I'm sorry, I don't mean to sort of, you know, be a repetitive contributor, but I really do appreciate what Cash has done this evening in organizing this meeting. And I am a campaigner and local activist, and that's why I'm sort of speaking again, and I do take your leave and thank you for that opportunity. I just want to get some key messages across to everybody, please, because you all are in the voluntary sector and you all represent other people and you can all disseminate that information. Leslie has suggested that the councillors need to be on PIPs. I'm afraid I go further beyond. The Local Government Act 2000, Section 2, Subsection 4 requires, it's not an option, requires councillors to form specific local policies that meet the needs of the demographic. That is their duty in law. It's a statutory duty, and that is done through, e.g. in planning terms, if we talk about planning, which is a key issue, local issue of concern, that's done through SPDs, supplementary planning documents. Ealing Council has none. None. That would mean that for Southall, which has a higher BAME community, a higher Asian community, let's say, than Ealing, we could have a separate SPD just for Southall. That is done, if I may explain, in the London Borough of Hackney, equally a high majority Labour borough, in the ward of Stamford Hill, where there is a single Jewish councillor, Conservative. He formed a specific local policy to meet the needs of the Jewish and Muslim communities in the ward of Stamford Hill, whereby, because of their cultural traditions of large families and intergenerational living, all other planning considerations take a subordinate position. And what he has implemented is that any planning applications coming from these communities for home extensions or any additional livable space that they need, they are approved. That's it. Because of the tradition of intergenerational living, caring for their relatives, their own relatives, not going to the state, not putting people in care homes, caring for their own loved ones, and because they have larger families. Now, why that's significant is, in 2017, Ealing Council's own research identified that at least 25% across the borough and it's higher in the densely populated areas of Southall e.g. At least 25% of homes were short of a minimum of one spare room, i.e. people did not have the livable accommodation at their homes that they needed, according to their needs. Come the pandemic, noting that since 2013, Public Health England had been warning that we are threatened with deadly viruses in this country, noting that SARS happened in 2003, MERS happened in 2007, then we had Ebola. What were the councillors doing when they're being paid 200,000? 15 councillors are being paid £200,000 per annum to be councillors. So what were the councillors doing? The point being that Public Health England in June 2020 published a report that Boris Johnson's government commissioned, and Public Health England said that the reason why so many people from BAME backgrounds suffered COVID so badly and died, i.e. their lives ended, is because they had inadequate accommodation at their homes. Noting that in 2017, Ealing identified the same, that people don't have a minimum of a spare room at their homes. So when people had been crying from Southall, particularly the Asian communities, had been refused, continually refused, home extensions by Ealing's planning department. And when we complained to our councillors said, oh, just appeal, just appeal. And I should mention to you here and explain that the department that runs Ealing Council's planning appeals, the response cases, is privatised. But they deny that it's privatized. And that department has formed the links with the planning inspectors so that our appeals are refused.
Got it.
And today we have the consequences whereby where there is intergenerational living, there is not the safe accommodation within the homes, because we haven't been allowed the home extensions because Ealing's planning department has been refusing us. So we don't have that safe home environment in order to self-isolate. Ask the question that where were people supposed to self-isolate if they contracted COVID-19 when they didn't have the spare accommodation in their homes because Ealing Council's planning department wasn't allowing the home extensions? What should people do? Go to, noting, if I may say, I'm coming to a close, 2/3, at least 2/3, and the chair of Ealing Council's planning department have got outbuildings at their homes that have got kitchens, bathrooms, central heating, electricity, full facilities, livable accommodation, all of which they had been denying to the residents of Southall. More than that, they had attended in the mornings at those very homes where the council came to demolish those outbuildings. And then in the afternoons, they went home and had coffee, lunch, dinner in those very outbuildings where they have got the same facilities that they demolished to the residents in the mornings. Now, Councillor Sheetal Munro, when I raised this question at the last CAB meeting last week, he said, oh, I don't understand what you mean about fairness. What's unfair about that? He said. I mean, the councillors are allowed to have the outbuildings fully equipped with all the facilities, kitchens, bathrooms, electricity and heating, but residents aren't. And so where are we supposed to self-isolate, I ask you? And so when the Bahamian people died because they didn't have the adequate accommodation, who has blood on their hands, please? Thank you very much.
Well, certainly that's an eye opener. We'll ask the councillors afterwards. Sophie, next, please.
Yep, Teresa Mummans, I believe it is. Sorry if I pronounced your name wrong.
Hi, good evening. Yes, I am Conservative. I'm just reading all the things that are coming up here on the chat and everything else. First, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Teresa Mummans. I am the chair of Ealing Southall Conservatives here in Ealing, and I have been now for the last nearly 3 years. I am an ex-councillor of Northfield, so Councillor Mason and I know each other very well, and we worked for many years together, Councillor Mason and I. I never met you, Jascarin, so you're a new councillor that's come in since I left. So you must have got in at the last election. And I will say, as a Conservative, Jascarin, you speak very passionately. As a Labour person in Southall, you know, you are speaking, and, you know, I've got only goodness to say about you. Listen to you talk about Southall, and as a Labour councillor, you're the first Labour councillor I've seen in Southall actually trying to make an effort. So I am, as a Conservative, applauding Councillor Jascarin Cohan. Is that correct, Jascarin? I'm not very good at pronunciations. Yeah, excuse me, you've got to forgive my pronunciation.
Don't worry, welcome.
But she, you know, she's the first Labour councillor I have seen in Southall actually try to make an effort. Now, I'm sorry, where's Peter Mason? Labour councillor, listen, I've got a bad reputation, and I'm sorry, Peter, but when I lost my seat and Labour come up to me, and Peter can never denounce, I worked non-stop. I virtually lost my business because I gave 100% to being a councillor. And they said, Teresa, you've worked so hard, but understand, Peter, you're not going to like, but Peter didn't say it to me, but a few others did. Understand, Teresa, as Labour here in Ealing, we don't have to work like you. People automatically vote for us. And that's what they said to my face. But that's the reality, Angela. Angela, that's the reality. Okay?
Disgraceful.
But that's the reality. If you, you know, you're talking, all of you are talking here, they don't answer emails, they don't communicate. I know that. You can go to Northfields and look up my history. From the time I got, so just a quick brief, because I got another Zoom at court tonight. As soon as I got involved, first thing I said, I'm just a normal person from Ealing. I'm born and bred in Ealing. My parents were Irish. My family all lived in Southall. Actually, they lived in front of that big water tank in Old Southall, okay, for 50 years. St. Johnston Street. Is that correct?
All right, yeah.
Right, St. John's. And I think it was, I'll give you the actual door number when I look at my job, but I think it was either 37 or 40, 50 years. My uncle and auntie lived there, so I know Southall. So let's get back to basics where I'm coming from. I am trying to reach out to Southall. Understand, Ealing has only got 6 Conservative councillors. In the last, before the last local election, we had 12. We are, like the Liberal Democrats, totally in minority. Labour run everything. You're talking a lot about planning, but understand there's more Labour councillors on the planning committee than there is between the Conservatives and the Liberal Dems put together. So we never can win. Understand how it works. So all I'm saying here today, I've been actually trying to get hold of Southpaw Jan. I can see his picture here for the last month to see now that the restrictions are lifted, that I can actually come down and meet yourself, Angela, your head of cash, part of cash, and Southpaw Jan, because I know you're totally behind this overdevelopment, and I would like to come down. I was prior to COVID hitting, I spent the previous summer 2019. Okay, so we have a 6 weeks off, but I don't go away in the summer. So I took 6 weeks off and I was up and down Southall knocking on doors. And believe you me, the response I got, beautiful response around Southall, because they've never seen any councillor knock on their doors. Now, understand, when we're in minority, like we are the Conservatives, you know, we're hated in Southall, how difficult it is for us. But, you know, all the doors I knocked on, it is unbelievable the problems they were telling us between the overdevelopment, the drugs down in there, councillors do not interact with them, they don't reply, they just feel left out. I've heard this story. So I have put my email address up, I've put my mobile up, and Angela and Suffragan, please forgive my pronunciations. I'm
Not worry.
you know, bit of dyslexia, and I put my hands up to it. So certain words is very hard for me. But please, I put my email up, and now the restrictions are lifted. I'd like to come down to Southall. The overdevelopment, now Peter, come on. The overdevelopment in Southall is atrocious. You know what is happening in Southall, but it's not just Southall. Look at Ealing Broadway. Look here now, they're attacking here Old Hanwell. You know, it's going up, 50 stories high. And, you know, in this pandemic, and they're wondering why people in Ealing, you know, now we've got a little bit of restrictions. Well, suddenly it's packed out in Ealing and rates are rising in Ealing again because they're stuck in these tiny flats. Angela or Suffragette, have you actually been in these flats, these new builds? Have you actually?
No. I mean, they're not complete yet.
Well,
I took a photograph from Gulf Links Estate of the developments around the station on Merrick Road, and it looked absolutely horrendous.
Well, you need to go inside to actually see the reality. To actually, so nearly, so say 4.5 years ago, I got invited in to see the next release at the flat set Ealing Broadway behind Ealing Council. Now, a 2-bedroom flat for which we're expected, a 2-bedroom flat, because don't forget, children, if they're different sexes, no longer get the separate bedroom because we've got a crisis in housing. So before, you know, you could never put a girl and a boy past 10 in the same bedroom. Them days are gone. They're gone. So a 2-bedroom flat could house a family of 6. So I know many parents that are actually sleeping in a 2-bedroom flat in the living room. Don't forget, they're not living rooms, they're living room come kitchens and pull me down sofas. So the kids can eat. And I see Shelley nodding that she knows this as well. So Shelley, I'd love to meet you as well. I've put my email there. So, and this is how they're living. Now, we have been through the last 14 months of a pandemic none of us ever thought we'd see. These families have been cooped up in these flats with children of all ages. Now, imagine if you've got toddlers, but worse still. So when I was a councillor, the area, Shelley, I worked in, and Peter cannot dispute this, I am an advocate for autism, okay? I worked so closely with all the schools here with autism, the families to get them proper housing and everything else. And there is families in tower blocks with severely autistic children. And they've had to endure this through this pandemic. Now, people say the Conservatives don't care. Listen, you can't tar us all with the same brush. I'm a born and bred girl from West Ealing. My parents are Irish, hence why I'm a bit outspoken. We say it as it is, but Angela, so do you, all right? We speak from the heart, okay? So I'd like to come down, you know, don't knock us. I know Leslie's been saying we haven't seen the Conservatives. It's very, very, very hard to break out in a very Labour dominated area because they've tarred us as if we don't care. I'm sorry, but that is totally, totally wrong. So if anyone wants to contact me after this, I'll gladly come down as restrictions have been lifted, and definitely Suffragan I'd like, because my auntie lived right in top in front of that water tank to see what's going on. That I have been driving down and I'm flabbergasted at the overdevelopment. Flabbergasted. So that's all I've got to say.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate that. Anybody else have their hand up? Sofian?
Jan's next.
Yeah,
Come on,
Jan.
Jan, where are you?
Hold on, Jan, let me unmute you.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm Janet Griffiths. I've lived in Southall in the same house all my life. I'd be honest with you, I'm very despondent with this area now. I'm sad to say that I'm very closely considering to moving out, because I've got no alliances to this area now, because I think that the old people of Southall, when we see all the rubbish and everything, the one thing I have to disagree with Shelley on is that she was saying about how people are not allowed to extend their properties to have extra room. I find Southall is overdeveloped in their back gardens. You've got scrupulous landlords that are building these extensions in their back gardens, and all they're doing is they're putting other families in their back garden to make money. I see that in my road. I see that just down the corner from me. I walk around the park every day, and all you see is these poor families living in back gardens, what you used to call the beds in sheds. This has a knock-on effect with the fly tipping in the area, because as soon as these people move out of these beds with sheds, the mattresses go in the road, the rubbish goes in the road. You know, and I don't think you can blame it purely on the pandemic, because people can't build extra rooms in their properties. You've also got the problem, how many, you know, the majority of properties now, especially in Ealing, Southall Green, are HMOs. You very rarely now see the majority of houses being family homes. You know, I've got neighbours that have got 12, 13 people living in a house, in a 3-bedroom house.
Yeah.
Of course, these people have rent to pay, right? So when one of them gets sick, they're not going to self-isolate, because they've got to go out and pay their landlord's rent. Otherwise, the landlord's going to chuck them out. You know, I get really upset when I hear that, oh, you know, there's this and everything. Yes, the councillors are to blame. Okay, I had my run-ins with Peter Mason, but at least he bothers to come to these meetings. Where is Councillor Dinser tonight? He is an absolute waste of space. I'm sorry, he doesn't deserve a penny of the money he gets from being a councillor. I haven't been to one meeting in the last year where he's turned up and actually said something, you know? And I have to agree with everyone about Just Kieran. I wish she was our councillor in Southall Green, because she works so hard for the people of Southall, and she's the only one. And I'm going to shut up there, because I'm really annoyed tonight about the way Southall residents are treated, the rubbish around here. I've got a neighbour, an English neighbour, she's moving out. You know, I've got another neighbour who's been here 40 years. She's moving, because the old people of Southall, there's no future here for us anymore. It's all about landlords making money. It's about people you know, these flats that are going up all around Southall, they're not going to be families that own them. It's going to be landlords buying them to rent them out, to make money. And on that note, I'm going to shut up, because otherwise I might say something I might regret.
Thank you very much. Sofian, anybody else got their hands up?
Yes, Salvinda, Shelley, and Angela.
Come on, come
but
on. Let's
can I
go.
just say
Let's go.
one thing quickly?
Oh, you can.
Say
2 things, Sofian.
As a youngster in Southall, obviously, yes, I've been involved in community work over the last 4 or 5 years. But as a youngster born and bred here, I feel that I'm being priced out of my area. Now, that's not only because of Berkeley Group site. There are other sites in Southall, Merrick Road, Park Avenue, and many, many more. Yeah, probably about 10 to 15,000 new houses are going up. Now, me personally, if I wanted to move out last year on my 19th birthday. Now, I've not been able to. I do have a substantial amount of savings from friends, family, and so on, but even that won't cut it to put down a deposit on even a studio here in Southall, where I'm born and bred. So that being said, where does that leave us as the youngsters of tomorrow's Southall? And yeah, the next person was, I think it was Salvinda. Yeah, I think it was Salvinda.
Come on, sir.
Angela mentioned a very important point that power belongs to people. By election times, that power gets taken away from us. And how does it get taken away? Because all our political representatives, they come and knock door to door only during election times with a manifesto policy that's already decided in favor of bringing profits to big business, multinationals at the expense of our community. And then through the media, through these contracts, they get us to vote for them. Then they blame us that we vote them into power. The other point is not conservative. It's not a question of who's Labour, who's conservative. None of them have represented our community. The community centre was sold. No, the lack of investment in Ealing Hospital. You take the gasworks development knocked off by Boris Johnson, who's a conservative. All our Labour MPs, except for Just Kieran. I know she's my granddaughter. I'm not just favouring her, but I would like to be proud of her that she's joined us today when her father is in serious sickness and has been in hospital from a stroke. That's
Sorry to
kind
hear
of
that.
that's
Sorry
the
to
kind
hear
of person she is. And when she stood in elections, I did discuss with her. I said, look, we need youngsters like you within various political parties, and we need people to fight from outside. And to Shelley, I'd like to say one thing. We are not joining parties to bring votes for the parties from our community so we can be duped and then promises get broken to us. We should be, if you're conservative, fight for our community within the Conservative Party. If you're in the Labour Party, fight for our conservative community within the Labour Party. If you're Lib Dem, fight there. And if you're independent, fight as independent, because you are truly independent and not subdued from the party whip. So you should use your whip against the cabinet leaders who betray us all, and ask yourself why you come to politics. Is it to bring profits for multinational big businesses and sell our communities? Or is it for the well-being of our community in terms of health, education, environment, and a better quality of livelihood?
Thank you very much. Sufyan? Are you having a tea break again, Sufyan?
Nah.
Teresa, Angela got a message?
Yeah, I think Angela, yeah.
Go on, Angela.
Oh, sorry, I thought I was on mute. I just wanted to say, I know what it's like living in overcrowded accommodation. I live in a one-bedroom flat with my two daughters, and the living room, which is an open plan kitchen living area, becomes a bedroom at night. And every morning I have to fold away the bed. And to have a Zoom meeting, I have to insist that they are quiet or go to the bedroom. It's just a fact of life. And when I was filmed at home for the Guardian film, and I recommend that you watch it if you haven't seen it, it's on the Guardian YouTube channel, Is My Neighbourhood Poisoning Me? It's so groundbreaking. The Guardian filmed Cash over the period of a year. But anyway, I was stressed because I was thinking, I don't want anybody to come and film me in my home. I'm embarrassed. It's overcrowded. There's junk everywhere. And I think I must have spent about 2 weeks trying to tidy up. Anyway, on the day that the camera person, producer and journalist turned up, I resorted just to chucking things in the bedroom and thought to myself, well, you know, there's no need for them to film in there. That's the best I can do. You know, it's a reality. My neighbour also lives in a one-bedroom house. I think he's got a 7-year-old and a newborn, a 1-year-old. He had COVID, and I didn't dare ask him what it was like to have COVID in a one-bedroom flat with 4 people. It must have been absolutely horrendous. So that is my reality, and it drives me forward. And I look at the flats that are going up, and I think you need nearly 400,000 for the privilege of living in a studio flat, again with a pull-down bed. And I look at my children, and they are very hardworking at school. And I think to myself, it's very unlikely that they will be able to afford a flat. And in all honesty, I wouldn't want them to spend nearly £400,000 to be a leasehold in a high rise, potentially being very isolated and depressed. But I have to say, it's not just happening in Southall.
Everywhere.
Hayes is the same. Hounslow Town Centre is the same. You know, it's horrific. But I am still welded to Southall because of the community and the schools. My children went to a fantastic primary school. They are now at Featherstone High School. And I had the privilege of being at home, listening into their online lessons. And I was amazed at the quality and depth of the lessons. And I went to university myself and I thought, crikey, this is really top-notch education. You know, why would you want to send your children to Tiffin School in Surbiton and Langley Grammar when we've got excellence on our doorstep? Going back to the political scene, I would say to anybody, come and visit Southall. Teresa, I'm more than happy to make arrangements for you. But visit us, see what it is like. Come and see the developments for yourself. Come and smell the odour. You know, I've actually extended that invitation to people in Ealing Matters, but they don't seem to want to know. What they want to do is impress at meetings organised by Cash and GCU and share their prior experience working on the gasworks. It shows to me that racism is blatant because that information was shared with a predominantly white audience. I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't hold me back. It just makes me more driven for accountability and for justice. Because as I've said previously, people are dying. Now, as you are probably aware, Cash has gone beyond just being Cash. We are a founder member of Gasworks Communities United. And I invite you all to come to the inaugural meeting on the 29th of April, because I'll be giving a short presentation there, and it will expose Ealing Council for utterly failing the people of Southall. And when we talk about structural racism, systemic racism, individuals are responsible for that. Somebody or a group of people made a decision that we didn't matter in Southall. Our lives weren't worth it. Our lives weren't worthy of being protected by the Environmental Protection Act. So yes, they have blood on their hands, but frankly, they don't give two hoots because it's not their family, not their loved ones who have passed away. And what I would really like to do is put these individuals in a room with the people who are grieving and for them to really see the impact of the decisions that they have made. My life has value. The whole of Southall residents' lives have value, but you wouldn't believe it in the way that knowingly councillors are aware that action could have been taken, but the legal advice is subject to legal privilege. But in the end, it will come out. Now, I don't just want to be negative because we are so driven as a campaign group. So we have the APPG taking place, but behind the scenes, we have academics doing research. And in the end, it will vindicate residents who'll be proven right, because all Ealing Council have wanted to do is squirm and find ways to uphold the rights of a property developer. And really, they don't have those rights. It's about an exploitation of privilege and supremacy. But the councillors who've taken sponsorship, they want the nice life. They want to live the millionaire lifestyle, but they don't want to work for it themselves. So they are weak, unprincipled, and they will sell out anybody for self-interest. Well, you know, At the end of the day, we will be proven as justified for fighting for our rights. I know Peter Mason's here tonight. He's come in for a lot of flack. Good to see that he appears to be listening, because usually he has his head down, scrolling his phone, totally disinterested. Now, thanks to Leslie Bundon, I'm going to have to say Leslie has been very supportive of Cash. He's called out these councillors on Twitter because they all like, well, not all of them, but some of them are very active on Twitter. And they come crawling out of the woodwork. Peter Mason, I invited to meet with us during the pandemic last March. And he said, I'll meet you on a street corner. And I said, well, that's not feasible for us. There are people who are elderly in the group, people who've got health issues. It's not appropriate to stand on a street. So I said, we've got a Zoom account. We can invite you and have a meeting with us on Zoom. He never responded until this March because he was upset about a tweet in relation to a Jewish festival and didn't take it in the spirit was intended. But he's not the only one, you know. I would say, quite rightly, with the exception of Jasquin, they are all absolutely useless. And that includes one I used to work with closely at the college who just keeps their head down. You know, why should residents vote for these people who do nothing? And I would say there is a growing movement towards standing as independents. And I think there is a massive catalyst for that because there is so much disillusionment with our political representatives who do nothing but ride the gravy train. You know, how can you say in 2018 that the Odas were supremely bad and do nothing and then take Barclay Group's money? It's just, for me, beyond belief when people are dying. Back in 2018, a member of the audience at Ealing Council's public meeting said, "You killed my father." I will never forget those words. There is an elderly man who appeared in the film, Is My Neighbourhood Poisoning Me? He has since died. He lived on Beaconsfield Road, his garden backed onto the site. His home was perpetually filled with dust and fumes from the site. There are certain councillors who've stayed away. It's reprehensible. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. I'm sure, Angela, when the time is right, we will name and shame the councillors. Don't worry about that. I promise you that. Sufyan, anybody else got their hands up?
Shelley messaged me privately. She wants to say a couple of words. Please.
Come in, Shelley. Don't feel shy. This is for us to understand and for us to learn. That's why we keep quiet and we give you the time. Please come. You're more than welcome.
Thank you very much, Sufyan and Joe. If I don't want to take up, because we're nearing 9 o'clock.
Don't worry.
But I just want to have a few responses.
Sure.
But before I do that, I really, Angela, oh my goodness me, if I didn't have the need to speak, I really would have nothing to say to everything that you have just communicated, really. I mean, what can I say? Nothing. My heart bleeds, frankly. Also, Mr. Dylan Salvinder Pudgy, I don't know where you have this idea in your head. I am not going to be standing for any council or MP. I have no such ambitions. I have so many times they have, in order to make me one of their own, in order so that then my mouth is shut, They have many times tried to persuade me to be a councillor, both parties, Labour and Conservative, and I am a member of none.
Well done.
So I have no ambitions whatsoever, either for council or parliament. I am just here because of the troubles in society, being a community welfare volunteer for decades. That is why I am here, no other reason. And Jess Kieran, I do not know you, dear. I have only seen you here. I only know you of a councillor from the record on the council. But from what Paji Salvinder has said, really my sympathies with you. I hope your father gets better very quickly. I know how difficult it is. My father died an untimely death. So I know all of those problems, and my sympathies are with you. If I can just request all colleagues here, please. One thing, the council has managed to get its way through the divide and rule policy.
Well done.
And you see, when we start to argue amongst ourselves and do not understand the issues, that is how we lose and they win. And I may just mention here, it is the Labour Party members who have long been, first they were the street watchers for their councillor mates, reporting on anybody they didn't like. You know, oh, his rubbish is here. Oh, it was anybody who they had some sort of disagreements with, or they didn't like them, or their prejudices. So they were reporting to the council, all those people's, anything that they were doing. And that's how the council was winning. Today, Dr. Sahota, a couple of weeks back on the radio, called for those very members who now they are naming as community monitors. Called for those community monitors now to start the reporting again. You see, because the Labour Party members, in return for the votes for the nominations, they get all the benefits and favours for planning consents, for anything else, dropped curbs, all of that stuff they get in return for doing this, for A, nominating, supporting their nominations, the councillor nominations, and B, reporting on all these people who then get fines. The fines go into the pockets of the councillors and they tear the stomachs of our children. So believe me, colleagues, there is no merit and no benefit to be had in us arguing between ourselves. And why I say that is because Jan, I think if she is still here, she mentioned about the garden developments. Let me please explain. I am not a proponent or supporter of beds in sheds rentals, no. But outbuildings are allowed according to the GPDO. Outbuildings with showers, with kitchens, with central heating, with electricity are allowed if they are ancillary to the main house and the householder's use. If all the connections go from the main house, they are never a separate unit. This is the law. I'm just telling you the law. The law has been unlawfully, the council has demolished these outbuildings. All that was needed, if somebody, scrupulous or unscrupulous, whatever, I don't know, each case is different. You have a disabled gentleman whose wife's nephew and his wife are his carers. Due to the cultural issue, the couple wanted privacy and didn't want to live in the main house. So they lived in the outbuilding but delivered care to the wheelchair-bound homeowner. Okay? Now that's not unscrupulous. That was the gentleman's need. But the Ealing Council for 6 years held a sword over that gentleman's head that he must unlawfully tear down that outbuilding when he had a legitimate defence under section 17931 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990. The point I'm making is that all that is required is that the homeowner, if he has let out unlawfully the outbuilding, let's say, all that's required is that he gives a declaration to the council in writing that, okay, please let me keep my outbuilding, but I will not let it out. I'm sorry, I made a mistake, forgive me, but let me keep the building. You councillors have got these same buildings, so why can't I have that building? Let me please explain to colleagues. Public Health England has published a report that says that the country is facing deadly threat from further viruses going into 2025. So we all are going to need self-isolating facilities in their homes. And like Angela said, 4 people living in a 1-bedroom shoebox flat, where are they supposed to self-isolate? So if the Ealing Council is not going to heed these warnings, then I suggest that we all, as community welfare volunteers, we circulate information in the community that class actions be taken against Ealing Council for the loss of life. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillors, I have a question. If everything that Shelley's told us, or the information that we've received from her, if that is correct, then don't you think it's criminal that the councillors have liberties and yet the residents are suffering? I'll tell you a case next month. If everybody will join us on the 20th of next month, we will have this meeting again. Hopefully, Angela, about 7 o'clock, I think is good. Does it make sense, Sufyan?
Yeah.
And
no,
I will tell
yeah.
you a story that will make your hair stand. I think it's criminal, actually, Shelley, the way we've been treated by Ealing Council. Well, then there was a case regarding Ealing Town Hall. I believe the judge, in his summing up, wrote, London Borough of Ealing are institutionally racist. Peter Mason, I'm sure you're not racist, because I certainly am not racist. To me, everybody has red blood. If a child was knocked down on my road, on Beaconsfield Road, which has now become the M3 of Southall, because it's the back route from the bridge and South Road, etc. This is the shortcut now to get back onto the Broadway. I will go and help that child. I would not go there and ask them what race, what breed, or what religion they belong to. So we have to learn to be humane to one another. And I think that's what's missing at the moment in Southall. That's what's missing. We're unhumane to each other, long as we get our wicked way. And this is what it's all about. Sorry, Sufyan.
Joe, yeah. Leslie has his hand raised, and then we'll come to a close.
Yeah, sure, Leslie. Come on. Don't worry. We can go a couple of minutes over.
Yeah. Leslie.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. And again, just want to say again my thoughts with Just Kieran. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Big respect to you, and wish there is a speedy recovery, please God. This now brings up to opening the floor, and I would really like to see if Peter Mason would have the integrity, or forget integrity, Peter, have the courtesy and respect. Throughout the last 2 hours, you have not engaged at all during tonight's meeting. There's been a chat forum here on Zoom, there's been messaging, and you haven't even done that. You haven't raised your hand. So there's been a lot of talk about what councillors do or don't do. You know, we've spoken many times on Twitter. You know, there's many times you haven't responded. So opening the floor to you, Peter, in a fair and transparent way.
I will ask him to unmute. Yeah.
Yeah, Joe, with your permission as chair, I'm happy to speak. You know, one of the principles that I thought this meeting was for me to come and listen to you, and you know, I'm not going to sort of take up your time and the time that you want to make contributions by sort of making points or as others have done, whether it's sort of whether it's political or otherwise. And you know, that's the principle that I operate in. If you want me to speak, I'm sort of more than happy to speak, and there's a lot that could be said. So the first thing, sort of in defence of political parties, right? The reason that I joined the Labour Party, and probably the reason that Just Kieran joined the Labour Party, and the reason that people, I think, joined the Labour Party, like Tories joined the Tory Party, is because they believe in collective action. And they believe that you get power and you can get things done by joining together and making change happen. I joined the Labour Party when I was a teenager, after I grew up on a crappy council estate in a socially and economically segregated part of Leicester. But historically, and by the way, a Labour council had deliberately sort of used its housing allocation policy to put white working class families in one part of town and Asian communities in a different part of town, particularly after sort of the Ugandan migration of Asians into Leicester. And they've even gone as far as to put adverts in the Ugandan press to tell people not to come to Britain, right? So that's my politicization. And if I thought for 1 second that I was involved in the Labour Party for the wrong reasons that aren't grounded in why I got into politics in the first place, I wouldn't be doing them. And that said, there are plenty of decisions that I've taken and been party to that I regret. I'm a human, I make mistakes, and I'm sorry for those mistakes. Some of those mistakes I've been party to as a member of the Cabinet in Ealing. And there are plenty of things and decisions that we've taken and things that I've tried to do from within to try and influence decisions that ultimately haven't worked. And we've talked a little bit about that on Twitter. Twitter's not the real world, Leslie. There are 25% of Britons on Twitter. This is the real world. This is a conversation that's meaningful. The conversations that we have on the doorstep and the telephone conversations and the casework I do are meaningful conversations. You know, I'm not going to get involved in Twitter spats that accuse people of this, that, or the other, when we can have a meaningful conversation, however difficult it might be in this type of space. I know that I've made mistakes. One of those mistakes was accepting sponsorship from the Ealing and London brand to go to MIPIM in 2019 after I took over as the Cabinet Member for Planning. Because what I found, in terms of what I thought I was going to do, was very different from the experience. And to pick up a point from Salvinder is absolutely right. So there are deep structural things that ensure that Southall is in the situation that it is in. Today, there was a paper that went to the council that looked at the private rented sector regulation. 54% of all properties in Southall Green are in the private rented sector, and 25% of all properties are deemed to be substandard, yet you will continue to pay high rents in Southall Green when the average income of people living in Southall Green is about £16,000. In Southfields, on the other end of the Uxbridge Road, it is £40,000. And that deep inequality that exists in terms of people's income is as much about structural racism as it is people's ability to access skills, employment, and jobs. That is a fact. Now, I believed for a period of time from within the Labour Party and within Cabinet, I was trying to do things to make a difference to that situation. When I was the Cabinet Member for Skills and Employment, we brought forward a social value policy that put things like the London living wage, trade union rights, terms and conditions, banning 0 hours contracts into the council's ability to control the contracts that we were letting out. It disappoints me that a policy that I implemented as the Cabinet Member for Employment hasn't been applied in the context of our dinner ladies and our dinner workers, right? That is not a good situation. And I can tell you that I have made representations to that effect within the structures of the Labour Party. There are plenty of things that I think that we have gotten wrong historically. Shelley, you talk about sort of planning policy and the planning policies that are available in Southall. We do have a special planning guidance, right? We do have a special supplementary planning document. It's called the Area Opportunities Framework for Southall. and it was agreed in 2014 with the then Mayor of London, who's now the Prime Minister, that effectively set out a big plan for regeneration in Southall, off of the back of Southall being a destination for Crossrail. And effectively what that document said was that as Southall was now going to be within 20 minutes of central London, the future of Southall, a once industrious town that had lots of employment, and the reason that the community is as the community is now, would become a residential location. And in 2014, decisions were taken that effectively gave the green light to the scale of development that we've now seen in Southall. I know how difficult it is to listen to me say retrospectively the things that I disagreed with, but I did them from within inside the camp and within inside the Labour Party, agitating from within to try and get things changed. And when, on a range of issues, whether it was the gasworks, whether it was regeneration, whether it was active travel, I felt that the road had run out and I couldn't make any more of an impact from within. I decided that my time was up and I resigned from the cabinet. Now, there are plenty of things, Angela, I'm sure we will discuss next week in relation to cash in terms of the actions that I took when I was in cabinet and the actions that I'll continue to take from this point onwards, that I think that we can still change some of those situations. And I still think it's possible to turn around certain things that are happening in Southall in the area of regeneration, in relation to our high street, in relation to employment, in relation to the private rented sector, in relation to building not like ridiculously expensive co-living apartments and Sufyan, properties that you can't access, but actually genuinely affordable homes at social rents. And that's what I was trying to do when I was in cabinet and the priorities that I was working on. I know that it's going to be difficult for me to be saying those things to you in this context and for you to simply not believe them. I get that. I totally get that. But ultimately, sort of, I will continue to do the things that I'm very passionate about doing. And what I would hope is, whether I've said these things in public, whether I've said these things in the meetings that I have attended, I absolutely have attended those meetings and I've tried to do my level best within the constraints that I've had and Just Kieran has in terms of the whip and the Labour Party to try and make an impact and to try and make a difference. I'm not perfect and I'm definitely a human and I've definitely made mistakes and ones that I regret. But what I would say is what you see in terms of that activity and what we deliver are two separate things. And as I say, there will be a performance improvement program, right? There will be a chance for people to have their say. And I get that people feel frustrated in terms of the Labour Party's dominance in somewhere like Southall, but there will be an election. And if you don't think that we've done a good job, and if you don't think I've done a good job, you'll get to vote me out. And I'm very, very happy to put sort of that on the line and work with the outcome of whatever that election looks like. But yeah, thank you.
Appreciate that.
Joe, I'm really conscious of the time because it's now 9:10. And I think, unfortunately, we cannot give everybody the chance to have a say. But what I would hope that this meeting is a catalyst for regular meetings, because I want to concentrate on some positive things that are happening. Cash has been awarded a grant to make a film by young people for them to share their vision of Southall and what they want from Southall. And I think that the young are really, really powerful. I heard a young woman speak about the air pollution at the national elections a few years ago. And I thought, well, clearly Cash is having an influence, but they need to be able to tell their own story, have their own narrative. So I'm quite excited. That's a project that is going to take place this summer. And I'd like to come back to you, and perhaps you might be able to volunteer some young people who would be interested in the project to mould it in a way that they see fit, and to have a voice. Also to feed back to you the outcome of the APPG on gasworks regeneration, and it's envisaged that will grow and develop and really be a powerful platform for all campaign groups affected by gasworks regeneration. Joe, I'm going to hand over to you for closing remarks.
And I just appreciate everybody's time. It's been interesting. I'm sure everybody here has learned something that we didn't know 2 hours ago. And I would hope that we could carry this on next month on the 20th and at 7 p.m. And that's what I believe is the way forward, to listen to one another. So once again, thank you very much kindly for giving us your time. And Shelley, we are on the phone, okay? You can get my telephone number off Sufyan or Angela, okay? And they also have my email address as well. You have Sufyan's number, I believe. No? Angela, could you please send a message, or Sufyan?
I'll send you a private message with my number.
Send it to Shelley, please, yeah, with my mobile number. But I'd like to say thank you very much to everybody. And, you know, let's take this forward and see how we can help other people. And also the problems that everybody has. And Ealing Council, their sad case. They know we're coming, don't worry. Thank you, Sufyan.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank everyone for attending tonight, and we hope to see you next month on the 20th.
Very kind.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
God bless.